All right, guys, welcome to week 14 of the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni. What's up, dude?
What's up, buddy?
I just took the worst beating of my life in League One of the free Tendy fantasy leagues. Justin Jefferson got me 1.4 points in my flex, basically eliminated me from playoff contention. I still have an outside shot, but that team's dead. My teams are leaking oil everywhere. I have a super team that lost last week by 3 points. I sat Bucky Irving. Bad fantasy season for me, actually. I think I'm like about 500 total on the year, which is a far cry from where I was last year. How are your teams doing, man?
Pretty good. I need to add everything up, but I think as of right now, 11 out of the 12 free tendies leagues, I'm locked for playoffs. And then one of them I'm pretty likely to get in if I can win my game this week.
There you
So
go. 12 for 12
looking
on the
at
playoffs
looking at 12
potentially.
out of 12. And then looking at, I think I have 5 buys locked in. I might get 6 buys.
Also pushing
So
for diamond manager rating as well. So
yes, sir.
big
Two
ups
two
to
points
Yanni.
short. Hey man,
Exactly.
hey, we're working together here. It's the free tendies brand we've been advancing this season. I think we're doing good work overall.
When I think of an algorithm that perfectly encapsulates how good you are as a fantasy manager, it is the Yahoo manager rating. There is no flaws
Yeah.
with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
All right, enough bullshitting. Let's get into it. We have four buys this week. It is going to be the 49ers, the Panthers, the Patriots, and the Giants. And this is the last week of buys, and it is the final week of the regular season for fantasy season. So playoff push is here. And we're starting it off on Thursday night, and I'll give this one to you, Yanni. I feel like you're much higher on these teams than I am.
Yeah, yeah. The all of a sudden 1.5 games back of the division lead Cowboys, going to Detroit to play the Lions. The Cowboys with an implied team total of 25.75. The Lions with an implied team total of 28.75. I think this game is an absolute gift on a Thursday, man. To get this thing, I'm really looking forward to it. I think this game could be like a Monday night game, right? Any given week. I thought the Cowboys Chiefs was cinema. I actually thought the Lions Green Bay game was pretty good. I mean, disappointing if you're a Lions fan, but I thought it was a really good game. So I'm looking forward to a great game of football here. I'm playing a bunch of DraftKings cards, Kings cards, purely because I want to be more invested in the game, right? So for the Cowboys, I mean, you're kind of starting everyone here, especially with 2 or 3 secondary members out for the Lions and with Aiden Hutchinson not playing great ball right now. Like this Lions defense is regressing pretty soundly from where they were at the beginning of the season. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, and Javonte Williams. It's actually not a great matchup for Javonte Williams, but he has been a top 10 running back this year. You're going to start him no matter what, but I don't know if I'm expecting like a banger of a week from him. The passing options I feel tremendous about here. CeeDee Lamb finally gave you guys like a rebound week last week, so you have to be excited if you're owning any pieces of this passing attack. I think this week it keeps rolling. And then for the Lions, we kind of tell you guys to spot start Goff when it feels good. This is a spot to spot start Goff. This is a great matchup for him at home, indoors, number one offense in the NFL coming to his house. Should be a ton of scoring here. I'm insisting that you get Goff in your lineup. Like, I think he has a real good shot at being a top 5 quarterback this week. Maybe, does he get there? Maybe not, but certainly top 7, top 8, right? So, like a nice QB1 with a nice high floor. I think you need to get him in there. And then Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams is also a must start, folks. I can't imagine what decisions you made with your roster where you're like, wow, I can sit Jamison Williams this week, but like I have him going in every one of my teams where I have him. I think there's a real conversation to be had, like back end wide receiver ones. If you somehow have 3 of them on your roster, like I would start Jamison Williams over Nico Collins, no problem. I'm a huge Nico Collins fan, but I'm rolling him over Nico Collins. Over high end wide receivers too, not even a discussion. Like the Lad McConkeys, the Emeka Igbukas, that sort of range. Him and AJ Brown would be kind of hard for me because AJ Brown's been on such a heater, but I think I'm going to go ahead and prefer Javonte or JMO to AJ Brown this week. Um, I just think he has a shot here for like high end wide receiver one usage here, and then Isaac Tesla is a start for us. Isaac Tesla has been the second most reliable receiver that is currently active, assuming Amon Ra's out on the Lions roster. There was one point this year where he had 4 career catches and 3 of them were for touchdowns. He just continues to flash left and right. So I'm actually playing for my double ups, right? Because you just have to get in the top 50% on DraftKings. I'm going to go ahead and captain Jamison Williams at like $15,000 of my budget for the card. But on my cash games, right, where you want to be more efficient and get more guys in your cash lineup, I'm actually going to go ahead and captain Isaac Tesla at it's like $6,000 on DraftKings. So like you can go in and you can stack up. I did Jared Goff, Jamison Williams, Tesla, and then I'm coming back with Dak Prescott and I think I was able to fit CD or Pickens on there, right? You can get all that in there if you're captaining Tesla. I think he's a great wide receiver 3 this week with wide receiver 2 upside if he catches the touchdown. Gibbs, I mean, no commentary needed. We know what the deal with Gibbs is. I'm going against him in a couple must-win games. I'm not looking forward to it. And then so you're going to sit Monty and the tight ends. The tight ends are just because it's a wasteland without Laporta. Monty is because you want to start him in easier matchups where they're going to have a lead and run him a bit. I anticipate a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs here, especially as they have to pass more and drop into the shotgun. And the Cowboys are sneakily, quietly one of the 2 or 3 best rush defenses in the NFL since getting Quinnen Williams. That kind of continues to hold up. They've played really easy competition as far as the ground game goes, but they did play Saquon in there. So, how seriously do we take that? I don't know, but I'm certainly not looking to throw in David Montgomery, especially as his usage continues to regress almost to below the 30% threshold. He's like between 30 and 35%.
But
That,
yeah, I mean, so I'm selling the Cowboys defense like being good.
yeah,
I guess.
yeah,
I think they're improved with Quinnen Williams, but I don't know how much I hate the spot for Monty. I like if the Lions get up big, like I feel like if this was like week 1 or week 2, right, we would project the Lions at like at least a touchdown favorite or more, right? So
mhm.
I can see the argument for Monty, but with the way the Cowboys offense is firing, I can see the argument for getting Gibbs in there. Tesla really, really like the start. We're doing a lot of heavy lifting here with the usage projection, right? If you are putting Tesla in your roster, just understand that the floor is 0 this week. The floor
Yep.
is he doesn't get used, and he could absolutely goose for you or dud in your flex spot. But if you're in a position like me in one of my leagues where I need to like win and win by margin and make sure I outscore other teams, and you need like a waiver wire hero. I kind of like that spot for him here. Then for the Cowboys, I don't really have anything interesting to say. They're kind of like it's crazy to say, but this is like the Rams offense to me, where it's like, yep, we just start our guys every week. I wish I
Yep.
had drafted more of them. Is my only real comment on that. I went early wide receiver in almost all of my drafts, and because that happened, I was not really drafting guys like George Pickens in the 4th, 5th round, and I wish I had, honestly. Wide receiver 2 on the season.
Is he really?
Yeah, he is the wide receiver 2 behind JSN right now.
In terms of overall, right? Because points per game, Rushy Rice actually moved into number 1 this week.
Yeah, in total points.
Okay. In total points? Okay. Wow.
Yeah. All right, next one. We get the Dolphins going to New York to play the Jets. The Dolphins have an implied team total of 22.25 points, and the Jets have an implied team total of 19.25 points. For the Dolphins, we're starting Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and 42-year-old rapper Darren Waller, and we're sitting Tua. Then for the Jets, we're starting Brees Hall and A.D. Mitchell. We're officially getting a second Jet into the start column. I may or may not need a 20-pointer from A.D. Mitchell to keep my playoff hopes alive in one league. A little nervous about that, but whatever. We're going to sit Mason Taylor, and then we're going to tricky decision Tyrod Taylor, actually. And let's start with the Dolphins because I feel like it's more of the same for the most part with this team, right? With Tyreek going down, it's just become a very condensed offense. The Dolphins are actually passing at like a very low rate in neutral game scripts, which means really that the Dolphins have committed to being like a running team, which was not on my bingo card for this year. But I think the big difference with what Miami's doing, much to my chagrin, I'm sure Yanni is going to be fist pumping at me, is Devon Achane has been playing like an actual running back, not like a gadget running back. Like he gets his dump offs too, right? But he has been effective actually running the football in a traditional sense in between the tackles, outside of the tackles. Matchups don't get better than this. Achane's inside my top 5 this week. Jalen Waddle, he's a start, even though the Tua's numbers are lower. The Dolphins are throwing less. It is just so condensed to Jalen Waddle at this point that he's like a rock solid wide receiver 2 to me. Maybe if he pops off, he could get in the top 10 potentially. And then Darren Waller. It's just we're trying to pick at the Miami Dolphins tight end usage. Greg Dulcich, it was a nice idea, but I don't think that was really the type of player that we could get fantasy startable weeks out of. Darren Waller, before he went down with his pec tear or whatever it was, he was like the tight end 1, I think, over like a 3-week sample size, specifically where he was playing. I think like last week he had a 2 or 3 grabs, something like that. So the production was less than it was before he left. But if you're gonna pick another passing option, I would prefer the tight end position. in Mike McDaniel's offense. And tight end is just a harder position to begin with, right? So while there's like a low end tight end one, more of like a desperation play if you have a guy on bye this week, like George Kittle, for example, maybe you throw Darren Waller in there. Then Tua, this is just based on the idea that the Dolphins are passing less. I think they're realizing, hey, we lose games when Tua throws dumb interceptions, so let's run the football more. Without the volume, he just hasn't been good enough. That's all right. We can just sit him here, even in an easy matchup against the New York Jets, minus Sauce Gardner and Quinn Williams. Then for the Jets, they get to play the vaunted Dolphins' terrible defense, which is great for Brees Hall. I feel like Brees Hall at this point, he gets all the volume, which is like a good thing, but the team around him is so atrocious that it gets kind of weird in like tougher matchups against real opponents, right? Like if the Jets were playing, I don't know, like the Seahawks, for example, I would be sketched about Brees Hall in that scenario. But against this Dolphins team where guys like Rico Dowdle rushed for over 200 yards, we're going to fire him up here. He's an explosive player to begin with. Really like the spot. Then AD Mitchell popped off last week, had over 100 yards and a touchdown. I think it was a really nice throw in for the Jets to get on that trade that they did for Sauce. They traded away Sauce Gardner, got AD Mitchell as a throw in, and he's really stepped in nicely, like to be at least a relevant pass catching option for the Jets. This is kind of like what was happening when Garrett Wilson was still healthy and playing football for the Jets. It's like you can have one wide receiver that is relevant on the New York Jets, and they'll usually get a really high target share. Looks like it's going to be AD Mitchell until Garrett Wilson gets back. So the way I view him is a very high variance flex. You need to be prepared. You're attaching yourself to Tyrod Taylor and the Jets passing offense, right? This thing could be 0, it could be 2 points, but I mean, he's a really athletic guy. He's an explosive player to begin with, right? If he doesn't do dumb shit like fumble the ball out of the end zone, I think it could be a good week here against a secondary that I know by the numbers, like the Dolphins haven't given up that many passing yards, right? So I think if you look at Yahoo, I think they're like 28th in points allowed to the wide receiver. So it looks like it's a tough matchup. It's not really. Teams just usually run on them. But I think if you're going to start one guy here, AD Mitchell is fine as a desperation flex. Mason Taylor, he is going to be a sit for us. He's the tight end 20 on the year. The Jets kind of do this weird rotation. Like, so Mason Taylor doesn't even get all of the tight end looks. And again, it's not that we don't like Mason Taylor. It's that you just can't, there's not that much juice to squeeze out of the New York Jets, right? So if like you're getting on average 4 to 5 points out of your tight end, I would prefer to take a shot on a guy like Waller, maybe that presents you more ceiling than Mason Taylor does. Then Tyrod Taylor, tricky decision. He had a pretty good performance last week against the Falcons, who technically are like the best pass defense in the league. I don't know how true that is anymore, really, but he can actually pass the ball in a traditional sense, something that Justin Fields could not do. This is really more desperation, super flex type of play, but I think you could do it this week against the Dolphins defense that is trash. I don't think the Jets win this football game, but I think they can score more than 14, 17 points here. So I think it's at least an acceptable start if you're desperate. What do you think, Yanni?
Not a lot to say, man. It's kind of a boring, like I don't think very many people will watch this game voluntarily.
Last time these two teams played was the Tyreek injury.
Okay, Seahawks going to the Falcons. Seahawks with an implied team total of 25.75, going to Atlanta with an implied team total of 18.75. Looks like Drake London's going to be sitting again this week, and that makes Atlanta really simple to deal with. You are starting Bijan Robinson. We're going to sit Tyler Algier here. The Seahawks are pretty good against the run, and Tyler Algier more gets that like hammer it out closer role or the ruin Bijan fantasy manager Sunday role where he arbitrarily takes 2 or 3 touchdowns a game off of Bijan's plate. You knew what you were signing up for when you signed up for Bijan Robinson. But Bijan's obviously a start, second in the NFL in scrimmage yards. He just doesn't get the touchdowns, so he's not in that like high-end RB1 range for me. Like he's not like a top 3 running back because he does not get the goal line usage. If he did, he would be because he's second in scrimmage yards. I could very clearly see a game script here where the Falcons get in real big trouble real quickly. They have Kirk Cousins throwing to Darnell Mooney against one of the best defenses in the NFL. It's just not an attackable matchup. So that's all you're doing for the Falcons. projecting for that same game script, right? With a high implied team total and a 7-point spread on the road against a defense that allows top 10 most points to fantasy running backs. I believe they're 10th on the dot in half PPR. We're going to start JSN. We're going to start Kenneth Walker, and we're going to start Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet is a fine touchdown dependent RB2 this week. You're probably going to get an RB3 week, maybe even an RB4 week out of him if he doesn't score. I just think he's so likely to score here, right? I know for like some of my rosters where I went like hero RB and hit the waivers. And unfortunately, one of my guys, if I was going hero RB, was Cam Scattaboo. So I have a bunch of rosters now that are all of a sudden like hero RB and then streaming, right? Because I lost Cam Scattaboo on like 4 rosters. Well, I actually went and got guys like Charbonnet, and Charbonnet's been a totally serviceable in that role where like I actually have a Bijan Charbonnet roster. He's totally serviceable. It's just not great. You don't feel good about it and you're just hoping on a touchdown. But I think this is one of those weeks where you should do that. Kenneth Walker has sort of ascended into a 15 plus touch per game guy, and he's looking really good with the volume. He just got tripped up last week. He would have had an 85 yard or like a 79 yard or somewhere around the 20 yard touchdown. He got past the corner. He was splitting the corner and the safety, and the corner got him by the shoestrings. He was going to break off the long one the moment that Kenneth Walker truthers were waiting for. He did not do it. But he gets enough touches that I think his floor now is more like an RB3 with like RB2, possibly borderline RB1 upside if he can get in the end zone. So at least that's a more comfortable start. I don't think he's a locked and loaded RB2. I believe he's RB21 on the year in half PPR points per game, but that also reflects a couple games without Charbonnet. I don't know. I think it's encouraging that he's getting used more. I don't know how optimistic I am. I mean, I'm starting him this week. I'm starting him over ETN this week. So, but how much, what is that really saying? I don't know. And then your sort of tricky decision is going to be Sam Darnold. The Falcons have actually been one of the most efficient and effective passing defenses in the NFL. I think the way to attack him is through the ground. I think the way that the Seahawks will attack him is through the ground. Obviously, JSN is going to get his like he does almost every week. I just would not hustle to put Sam Darnold in your lineups this week, especially when really there's only one like fantasy weekly starter on bye in Drake May. Like, I don't think you guys need to be reaching that far. I think there are better options more readily available for you at quarterback.
Yep. Totally agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think the Seahawks beat the shit out of the Falcons, and probably Sam Darnold doesn't have to throw very much in the second half.
No.
We've seen that. We've seen that multiple times from the Seahawks when they beat up these bad teams. All right, next we got an NFC South rematch. We got the Saints going to Tampa to play the Buccaneers. The Saints have an implied team total of 17.5 points, and the Bucs have an implied team total of 25.5 points. For the Saints, we're going to start Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, and then either Devin Neal or Alvin Kamara, depending on whether or not Alvin Kamara plays football. It feels like he's not going to go this week, but just keep your eyes on the injury reports there. Then for the Bucs, we're going to start Emeka Egbuka, and we're going to start Bucky Irving, my guy. We're going to sit Cade Otton and Mike Evans if he goes. Is Mike Evans going? Like, did we get any news on that, Yanni, or is it still speculative?
I'm checking so Alvin Kamara was a non-participant today. On Wednesday, non-participation after they said they're not putting him on IR, to me sounds like he's missing this week. I would bank on Evan Neal. Mike Evans, they opened his practice window and he practiced in a limited fashion today, but that can be up to a 3-week window. I just don't know, the short end of that injury was 8 weeks. So let me check again while I have my.
It's like a
Mike
broken
Evans.
collarbone, right? Like that is not. That is incredibly quick to come back from if he like is targeting this week.
Yeah, and what was that in Philadelphia? That doesn't sound right.
It was in no, he broke it in Detroit. It was the Monday game.
Oh,
that's
weird.
What you needed for your 5-0 week.
Yeah. I'm sorry, because of the hamstring, he was out for a while. Okay. So in Detroit, he broke it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, technically this would be 8 weeks on the nose. He would be coming back. I anticipate he sits, but Chris Godwin was limited today. Right. So it's just kind of weird, dude. They're a mess there. They're trying to roll out a geriatric unit at wide receiver. It's just really hard to say. But do you think, what in your opinion, why would they have him why would they roll him out to force him into limited practices now if it was unstable at all? Like a bone is either good or it's not. This isn't like a hamstring or a ligament where they're testing it out to see how it feels. I wonder if he says it feels solid and the x-rays show it's totally healed, I could see him going. Coach Bowles said there's a real chance he plays this week. That was the quote. So,
well, if Bowles said that, then maybe, right? Because they were so conservative with Bucky. Like maybe he is like on track. I don't know. Either way, we're
Yeah.
gonna sit him this week. I would say just going forward, see a good week from Evans before you put him in your
Yes.
lineups, but definitely grab him off waivers if he's there.
Yes.
Then for our tricky decisions, it's going to be Chris Godwin and Baker Mayfield. And we'll start with the Bucks first, since we were just talking about them. And Mecca Igbuka, it has been frustrating since I guess really the hamstring injury was kind of the start of it. We've seen like this weirdness with the Buccaneers where like they just had a slow drip of injuries, and then at a certain point, right, you have like Emeka Egbuka on a bad hamstring, and Baker's been banged up, and he wasn't playing good for like pretty much the past 6 weeks now, right? So Egbuka has 1 week in double digits, and one, yeah, there was a 20-point week, and everything else has been sub 10 points, right? So he's has not been producing like the exciting fantasy asset that we really hoped for, and kind of got excited about at the beginning of the year. So it's like, what do we do with this, right? Baker's going to play, but I mean, I'm not assuming we're getting beginning of the year Baker. I'm not assuming we're getting the Baker that beat the Seahawks. I think that until proven otherwise, like Igbuka's like on my wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3 borderline, but like he has high upside. So, I would definitely be starting guys like Jameson Williams over Emeka Igbuka this week, but like he's not in a bad enough spot to sit, I'd guess. But especially this game against the Saints, right? I think last time they played, Igbuka had like 12 targets, 4 catches, and like 20 yards or something horrendous, right? So temper the expectations, but we're still going to throw him out there. On a more positive note, though, Bucky Irving, we were kind of expecting last week for Bucky to be like on a touch count, on a pitch count. It didn't look like that to me. It looked like Bucky like he looked very healthy. He looked like someone who's been healthy for a while. He actually had a touchdown like pulled back. So he got in the end zone. Could have had two. Looks really good, man. His usage is really good. I think like in terms of the weeks that Bucky has actually played football, like his usage is like within the top 5 running backs in the NFL. Like he is getting used a shit ton, and because the Bucks passing game has been struggling, right? That's going to be an easy way to get it going. Is going to be running the football. Love Bucky this week as a high end RB2 to low end RB1. If you guys survived the 7 or 8 weeks Bucky was gone, this is where we eat, boys. The playoffs, it's coming. Love the start here this week against a pretty trash defense in New Orleans. Cade Otton, he's kind of the guy that you start when everyone else is injured, right? Now we're starting to get bodies back, and Cade Otton is no longer relevant. I would say, like, I think he's a drop candidate for me. Honestly, like, you could probably do
Yep.
better. I would start Darren Waller over Cade Otton, but it was a good run while everyone was out, right? Mike Evans, we already discussed. Chris Godwin, he outproduced Emeka Egbuka last week. He looked pretty good. He had a couple of long catches. This is more so just like how is he going to be able to go? At what speed is he going to be able to go? Will he be as effective as last week, right? Because he already had a limited this week. He popped up on the injury report. I don't know. I think that if you need a flex, I would be happy with going Godwin this week. I think that
Yep.
having Godwin and Igbuka both on the field helps them both. It's not a situation I think where one is taking away from the other one. I think that just having two good wide receivers out there helps everyone involved. And then Baker, tricky decision. In theory, it's a good matchup. In theory, he's getting more of his guys back, and it could be an exciting matchup. It's just that the production has not been there for Baker. His only game over 20 points over the past like 8 weeks was the one against the Patriots, and one of those touchdowns that bumped him over 20 was in garbage time, right? I think Baker, until he starts playing better, is like a low end quarterback 1 to high end quarterback 2. My Drake May and Baker roster, just for reference, right? Like at the beginning of the year, I was kind of rotating them based on matchup, but then once Baker started having this weirdness, it was just a Drake May team. I'm starting Baker this week. I don't feel awesome about it. I actually did look at the waivers, but that league is so bare. I didn't have anyone else. So rolling Baker this week. I hope he does well. For the Saints, I feel like it's very self-explanatory at this point, right? It's a very condensed offense. It's not a high-flying offense. The Saints are never going to have high implied team totals, right? So you're usually not getting blow up weeks from these guys, but Chris Olave's target share is really good. He's a really good player. His only real limiting factor to me is like just being on a team where Tyler Shuck is throwing in the ball. But even then, he's still been producing like a wide receiver 2 pretty much all year. I think he's like the wide receiver 11 or 12 this year in total points, which is incredible. He was a great value, especially like if you drafted him in like the 8th round, 7th round, and you kind of looked over the situation and just said, you know what, he's too good to be going this late. I think you won. You already made a profit. The Bucks defense has not been good in a while, so I would start him here. Juwan Johnson, he's just kind of like, however fantasy relevant he is, just it depends entirely on what his targets look like. When when the Saints have more guys that are available, Juwan Johnson kind of falls off. They don't really at this point. His usage has been really good the past 3 weeks or so. I think he's a top 10 tight end for me this week. A really gross top 10 tight end, but top 10 nonetheless. Then Neal and Kamara. It's probably going to be Neal, like we were saying before. He's just getting really good usage, and I think he's a fine player. He's not an explosive player or anything, right? But he's getting anywhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 opportunities against a Bucks defense that has been leaky if you do not run it Vita Vea. I think that if you need a desperation flex, if you picked up Devin Neal on the waivers 2 weeks ago, right, and you want to squeeze one more good week out of him, I think that 11 to 14 points is totally in the range of outcomes, depending on how the game goes. What do you think, man? Anything else?
Nah, you got it. Okay, really odd one for just for just the direction these two teams took from where they were last year. Redskins going to the Vikings. Redskins with an implied team total of 20.05. Vikings with an implied team total of 22. Vikings have been playing really good defense lately. I'm not sure how much I'm looking to attack this matchup from the Skins perspective, but for the Skins, Terry came back and saw really great usage. He put up a 19.1 point half PPR performance, cost me a buy in a league. A dude was flexing him, and I was like, "You're flexing Terry against Patrick Surtain in a must-win game for a bye week, off of an injury with Mariota throwing him the football." And I was like laughing, going, "I have this banked." And it turns out that the score from Terry was actually the difference between me getting a buy and me not getting a buy in this league. So, good week. I'm a huge Terry McLaurin fan. I've been buying him like on the cheap. I've been doing the arbitrage thing. I've just been buying sales on Terry all year, because I thought he had one of the best playoff schedules in the NFL for wide receiver. I believe he has like a top 3 easiest schedule. So it would be a big deal for me personally if he can come around. I don't think he does it without Jaden Daniels. Jaden was limited to open this week. It doesn't sound like he's been cleared for contact yet. I would be surprised if they rush him back against a really good defense with no playoff spot on the line. To be honest with you, I don't think they should play him again this year, but I also don't know why they wouldn't have put him on IR if they don't plan to bring him back. I think that's just kind of the way it is. And then Christian Rodriguez. This is a weird one, but I've been picking him up. Chris Rodriguez, I think it is. I've been picking him up off waivers left and right. One of the best playoff schedules in the NFL through week 16. I think he's totally live to be a solid flex. He got the touchdown last week. This is a really gross touchdown dependent RB3. I don't, how much do you value that? How much do you not? Your mileage may vary. But like I have a roster with Trey Benson, Omarion Hampton, Tyrone Tracy Jr. as my RB2s that I've been trying to get some semblance of a performance out of any of them. And I went ahead and picked up Christian Rodriguez this week, and I'm going to start Christian Rodriguez this week. So it's not a great spot. The offense isn't amazing with Mariota, but they did look a lot healthier with Terry McLaurin back. They gave Denver a run for their money. Denver's one of the best defenses in the NFL. Mariota's actually, I thought, played pretty good ball. So I'm going to call them both a start here. I think you can go ahead and plug them in. You're going to sit Zach Ertz. I know that's a little weird. He's the tight end 13 on the year and half PPR. He just came off a big game, but generally with Mariota, he just has not been startable. To me, he's an emergency tight end 2, and I'm not looking to plug in an emergency tight end 2 against Brian Flores' defense. It's been playing good ball. Sort of tricky decisions. I know Debo had a good game last week, and Debo's actually been like, for where you drafted him in like the 9th, 8th, 9th round or 9th, 10th round, like, I think you've gotten your money's worth on Debo. I actually might even call it a sharp pick simply because you got a really high-end wide receiver 2 flex spot for like 6 weeks. And he's been usable really for most of the last 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm certainly not, I don't think that was a bad investment at all. I just don't think I'm not looking to attack it this week. Personally, and especially not with Terry back and rolling. It's just not something I'm into. Mariota, great emergency streamer. Again, I hope you guys aren't an emergency streamer level like with the guys that are on bye. It's not like a crazy week for buys. I hope you're not at that point. But if you were a Brock Purdy roster, if you've been a Jackson Dart roster, if you've been a Drake May roster and you really don't have anyone else, Mariota's going to run enough that he's viable every week to get you 20 points. Like, you could do a lot worse. For the Vikings, We are calling Justin Jefferson a flat out start, and I will put my name on this. I think Justin Jefferson starts a generational run over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I think we see like 18 to 25 half PPR points per game out of JJ. The matchup, he has the easiest schedule in the NFL for wide receiver. It kicks off this week. I know it's been horrific. I know it's been like pulling teeth this year. My second to worst team is a Justin Jefferson roster. It's so frustrating seeing your first round pick get like 8 to 11 points in half PPR. I know. I've been there with you guys in the trenches. I do think it turns around here. And then Jones or Mason are also starts. This is weird. If Jones starts, they just seem to prefer giving him usage when they're both in the game and he's healthy. So I would prefer to start Jones if they're both going. If Jones sits, Mason becomes an instant must start to me. I think JP Mason is live for 20 plus half PPR points if he is the only running back in the backfield against this team. So great start for one or the other. Jones, I'm just a little worried about his health. Like even if he does play, I'm not sure. I mean, so I actually have a roster where I have to choose between Terry McLaurin and Aaron Jones, and I was so excited to start Aaron Jones this week. But now with his injury, I'm probably going to start Terry McLaurin. I'm not going to feel great about it, but I probably would prefer it, just because one hit to that shoulder and he's got an issue. It's an AC sprain. For anyone who's had one, I have had one in football before. It just takes one hit to jostle it the right way, and you feel like throwing up. The pain was so bad in my arm that I actually keeled over and almost threw up on the sideline when it happened. Right, so it's a finicky thing. But that's how I'm handling it. Your sits are going to be Addison and Hawkinson, not enough passing volume with 9 back there. And then your sort of tricky decision is going to be 9. JJ McCarthy, I'll be honest with you. This week, I actually think JJ McCarthy is a great streamer. I really do. On a couple Lamar rosters, I may or may not have picked up JJ McCarthy as insurance. He plays the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions. He plays the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions week 16 and 17. He put up 20 points against the Lions last time he played them. The New York Giants are a cupcake matchup. Look, this is fantasy football. We all want to win. We all have to make tough decisions. And one of those tough decisions I have recently made is looking at JJ McCarthy as a Lamar Jackson insurance policy after I took Lamar Jackson top 30. It's not great. It's not great. It doesn't feel good. You don't pick him up and you're like, yes. But like for week 16, for like if you have Lamar, my sales pitch, if you have Lamar, you get the Bengals week 15, Lamar versus the Bengals, even though he just dudded, I think we roll him there. And then you can have JJ versus the New York Giants and JJ versus the Lions week 16 and 17. I actually think it's tolerable. Maybe we'll revisit this clip and Ted will roast me later. Ted, what do you think of my synopsis of the game here?
Listen, if it's not this week, with JJ McCarthy and Justin Jefferson, it is never. So if you need it, roll 9 out there. Listen, like fantasy managers, you can do the funny thing where you pick up 9 off of waivers, then do the meme picture with 9 is your team's picture. Right? Like it's a huge opportunity. 9 could get you in the playoffs. This Redskins team, their defense is so bad. Their defensive backs are so bad. Like as long as the Vikings are a functional offense, which I know is asking a lot of them, like this is a great spot. So we'll see. Either it goes well here, or Justin Jefferson's a 49er next year.
Oh God.
Either way, I'll be happy with it.
Win-win for us, man. Honest to God, JJ McCarthy might be a 49er next year too if this keeps up. It might be that JJ McCarthy is the next rehab project in the Kyle Shanahan clinic.
Yeah, we fix up your quarterbacks, guys. Send them to us. All right, next one. This is actually an extremely fantasy relevant matchup for me. We have the Indianapolis Colts going to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. The AFC South leading Jaguars, I guess. It's funny. Like earlier on in the year, the Jaguars were a team that I just completely disrespected. I bet against them every week in the gambling show. I don't think they're a very good football team, and I think Trevor Lawrence is specifically the reason why they're not a very good football team. But hey, man, I think they're coached well, and I think that they kind of know what they are at this point. And
what do you think of Liam Cohen, like in general? What is your not the team, not the roster, not whether they're a Super Bowl contender? Just how do you think Liam Cohen's done with like bringing his brand of football and his personality to the team, maybe making him a little like younger and more current? Do you feel like there's any of that going on?
Well, I would say it's hard for me to tell with like how weird the offenses looked with Trevor, right? What I will say about Liam Cohen though, and this is something that Ben Johnson has done in his time in Chicago so far is his team isn't beating themselves really. Like when the Jaguars lose a football game, it's like because they were thoroughly outmatched by the other
Yeah.
team, right? And they're stealing games that they probably shouldn't be winning. So I don't know. I think he's good. I think Liam Cohen's a very good coach. I would like to see like a legitimate quarterback in his system though, so you can kind of get a better idea, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, Colts with a 24.5 implied team total, Jaguars 23 implied team total. So Vegas is saying this is almost a pick 'em. For the Colts, we're going to start Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, and Alec Pierce. We're going to sit Josh Downs, and then Dimes will be our tricky decision for the week. Then for the Jaguars, we are starting the prince that was promised, Trevor Lawrence. I am starting him on my super team as my quarterback too. He's kind of been thrust into that position because I traded into some Aaron Rodgers, and he's slowly dying on a weekly basis. Brenton Strange, he's actually another tight end streamer of mine on a George Kittle roster this week. Love him this week. Then Jacoby Myers, great move by the Jaguars getting him on the roster as it turns out. We're going to sit Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, and Baishal Tutin. And then ETN is going to be our tricky decision. And let's start with the Colts first. I feel like there's more to say about the Jaguars. Jonathan Taylor, it's a no-brainer. He is now technically the RB2 on the season in total points. Part of that is because Christian McCaffrey has not had his bye yet. He is on bye this week, so Jonathan Taylor, I would expect, overtakes the top spot. What worries me about Jonathan Taylor is the schedule after this game is not great for him. And it feels like what teams are doing now against the Colts, and it's been working, is stacking the box, doing everything they can to take Jonathan Taylor out of the football game and forcing Danny Dimes on a fractured fibula to beat them. I feel like that could be a problem later, and you could get like a ill-timed 8 or 9 point game from Jonathan Taylor, like in the playoffs or something. But this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't think they have the manpower on defense to stop him. Still a no-brainer RB1 this week, but that's my little warning label for Jonathan Taylor going forward. Tyler Warren, he cooled off a little bit, I guess, from his hot start to the season. Really like what he has been as a consistent, like, I don't know, 6 to 7 point player in terms of yardage and catches, and then like if he scores a touchdown, he like is in the top end of tight ends for the week given the position, right? Tyler Warren did score last week. I feel like this is a decent dime spot against a Jaguars defense that has trouble defending the pass. I think you're just going to start Tyler Warren here, right? He's always a tight end one. He's never on your bench unless you have some crazy circumstances. But I think that he has top three tight end on the week potential, especially with George Kittle not playing. Then for the pass catchers that we like, it's going to be Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. It's kind of I feel like going forward, we may not always have those guys in the start column, but given what the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is, how they give up all the yards in the air, and I feel like the Jaguars game plan in this game is going to be dimes, go ahead and try and beat us. I feel like there's going to be enough volume there for Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce like has been like a wide receiver 2 approaching wide receiver 1 over the past like 4 or 5 weeks since he got back from the concussion. He's been very good. He's a very nice player. I think he probably gets paid either by the Colts or somewhere else in the offseason. Played his way into a contract. Then Michael Pittman, he hasn't been over 40 yards within the last month, so that's a little concerning, right? But again, the Jaguars give up a lot of yards in the air. Michael Pittman is a red zone threat, I guess. Dimes looks at him a lot in the red zone. I feel like a touchdown is totally on the board here for Michael Pittman. He's like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, like a flex type of option for me. Josh Downs, it just hasn't been there this year. I don't know, like when your quarterback has a fractured leg, right? And we're trying to get all we can out of the passing game options. It's just I don't think there's enough for 4 wide receivers here. So Downs is the one we prefer to sit, and then Dimes. It is really just I don't think he's gone over 18 fantasy points since like the leg fracture happened. A big part of the reason Danny Dimes scored fantasy points is because of his rushing upside. I think that what was the stat I heard? Danny Dimes has not gone over 20 points in games he has not like ran in a touchdown, right? So I would assume he's not running in any touchdowns here. To me, going forward, I think he's going to be a really sketchy start that hopefully you could move off of. But in this game against the Jaguars, it's a really nice matchup. I think that he is in consideration for a tricky decision, not a full blown start though, which is a bummer given how good he was at the beginning of the year. Then for the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, he throws a lot of picks. He misses a lot of throws, but he's anywhere in the neighborhood of like 17 to 20 fantasy points a week, which is not like a rock solid quarterback one, but I think he's a back end quarterback one. That's just kind of what's happening with the Jaguars. I think the Colts score points here. I think the Jaguars are going to have to chase a lead. They won't be able to afford those game plans where they run with ETN and Bashaw Tutin like 28, 30 times. Trevor, he's been a gross start. Like I prefer to not watch Trevor Lawrence play football, but the fantasy box scores have been good enough. I think he's fine in that quarterback one, quarterback two borderline. Brenton Strange, quietly a wagon. Since he's been back, I think he's been in double digits every single week. From the tight end position, we take that all day. I like I said, I'm streaming him this week. I think he's like a mid-range tight end one. I really do. I think that the passing volume is going to be there. He's just like a consistent target in the offense. And then Jacoby Myers, he's looked really good. It looks like with the weird season that Brian Thomas Jr. has had, whether or not it's injury or something else, like Jacoby Myers is the pass catcher that I prefer rest of season on the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's a nice player. He's not an explosive player and an elite player or anything, but I think that the volume is there. I think that if you're going to start anyone in Jacksonville, Jacoby Myers is a good shout. Wide receiver 3 for me. We're sitting Brian Thomas Jr. I'm just to the point with him where I would like to see one good week before I even consider starting him again. I think in retrospect, like if you go back in like draft season, Brian Thomas Jr. has to be his biggest bust. I'd imagine, right? He was routinely going top 12 to 14, and he has been not even a wide receiver 3 this year. Hopefully next year it will be better. But at this point, I'm in a holding pattern with BTJ. I'm just going to wait and see. Parker Washington, it's over. It's over with Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr. That was a nobody else's here play, but now other guys are here, and Parker Washington just doesn't really move the needle. Then Bashaw Tutin and ETN. This is kind of interesting. ETN gets more usage, I guess, than Bashaw Tutin. So we always kind of prefer him. He's more ETN's more of a factor in the passing game. The Jaguars do like to run a lot, but again, we feel like the Jags may be down in this game. Negative game script. ETN gets more of the work, so we prefer him to Bashaw Tutin. Bashaw Tutin's been getting some goal line. It sounds like the Jaguars like him on the goal line, but I don't know. I would prefer ETN over Tutin. Tutin's more of like a I hope this guy gets in the end zone with the 10 touches he does get. I would just prefer to look elsewhere at the running back position. A lot of talking there, but I feel like there's a lot to say about this game, surprisingly. What do you think, Yanni?
I think Mac Jones for Brian Thomas Jr. sounds fair. Think that solves. I think Mac Jones for Brian Thomas, and you know what? Let's say like Mac Jones, Brandon Ayuk for Brian Thomas Jr. in a second. I think that solves a lot of problems for all parties involved. Um, yeah, no, I to be honest with you, I think ETN's about to come crashing down pretty hard. He has two really difficult matchups to end the season. I think it's Denver and Houston. He has a okay matchup week 15. He still got 13 touches last week, but only had 4.6 half PPR points against Tennessee. I'm kind of thinking this may be the end of the ETN run. He is currently the RB12 on the year in half PPR. So like he's actually been pretty great, man, for like a 10th round pick. I just don't know how long it keeps up. And then Brian Thomas Jr. Shockingly, I have two Brian Thomas Jr. rosters. One of them is the first overall seed. The other one is the third and might move into the second this week, but I'm never starting Brian Thomas Jr. again. I'm just telling you right now, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way that guy's touching my lineup ever again. I have Jamison Williams and Cortland Sutton on that roster. I will flex both of those before Brian Thomas Jr. I have Michael Pittman Jr., Tetaroa McMillan, and Terry McLaurin. I would start all three of those guys before Brian Thomas Jr. on my other roster. I would start Brenton Strange. Straight up in my flex spot, I would rather start Brenton Strange rest of season over Brian Thomas. I would start Bashaw Tutin. I would rather start Bashaw Tutin in my flex spot 1-for-1 over the rest of the year over Brian Thomas Jr. It is so unfortunate. He went from 1,400 yards in one of the 3 or 4 greatest rookie seasons we've ever seen from a wide receiver to whatever the fuck happened. I got him at 20 in one of these drafts, dude. 20. And I was like, oh my God, free money off the ground. I got him at pick 20 and it torpedoed me. absolutely torpedoed me. So yeah, I can't believe it. I'm shocked. I thought that was such a good football player after last season. It's been one of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
I still think he is a good football player. That round 6 Brian
I
Thomas
do
Jr.
too.
next year in draft is going to hit like crack, man.
Especially if he's a 49er.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Actually, a huge game for NFL stakes here. The Steelers with an implied team total of 19, going to Baltimore with an implied team total of 24.5. I know that Ravens fans have been suffering. I've been seeing the Lamar memes. We have gotten everything from Lamar Jackson and the JJ McCarthy picture. And then my favorite, though, is not when they just put the Lamar jersey on him or Lamar's face. It's when they did the blend of like the sort of Lamar face and sort of JJ face. That absolutely cracked me up. And then I've been seeing people saying their rosters are sinking like a rock with Lamar Jackson in there. Believe me, if you guys are feeling it, I am too. 5 out of 12 of my rosters are Lamar Jackson rosters. I'll explain when we get there what we're doing here. For the Steelers, very straightforward. DK Metcalf is a low end wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. I'm never excited to start him. I don't believe, Ted, you have no shares, correct?
None of DK now.
So your free Tendies fantasy leagues across 17 rosters faded DK with 100% of a rate there. That's because DK is just not a great fantasy asset. They are locked in for, I think, $150 million over the next 4 years. Good luck, Pittsburgh. But you are going to start him here. I mean, you kind of have to. It's just a game script thing. Like, you don't feel good about it, though. You don't feel good at all. At least if Mason Rudolph gets in there, he is liable to bomb the ball downfield like 30 times a game. That's all he does. So maybe that impacts things a little bit, but an unhealthy Aaron Rodgers with a broken arm, a 41-year-old or 42-year-old quarterback with a broken arm against Baltimore's defense throwing to DK Metcalf. It's not great. I still think you're probably flexing him. And then Jalen Warren, the only player from this offense that I would really feel solid in week to week, because at least you think the volume's going to be there and the upside's potentially there. Hasn't really been a touchdown machine, hasn't really been a yardage machine. He just sort of gets a combo of both, like enough receptions out of the backfield, enough carries, enough of a chance at a touchdown that you're still starting him as like a back end RB2, high end RB3. Pretty good flex because some weeks he's going to go ahead and give you that, like, 15 to 18 points, and at least he's going to give you some floor. So I think you are starting him here. I just don't know how good I feel about it. And then your sits are going to be Gainwell and the tight ends. If the tight ends were one guy, they would be the tight end 4 on the year, but they're not one guy. I just prefer to stay away from all of them. You also have Freiermuth taking like shots at Aaron Rodgers in the media this week. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. And then Gainwell is also a sit, just because to me, this is the kind of player, and I said this about Jameson Williams a few weeks ago, little did I know. This is the kind of player that I'm just not looking to roster or start in fantasy football. I mean, roster maybe as like an upside handcuff, but like Gainwell, he's going to have some weeks where he goes off and everyone's going to go get him off your wire. Like we've seen that like 4 times this year, the cycle of go get Kenneth Gainwell off the waiver wire. He's a must add. I don't think you can reliably time when he's going to get his points. I don't think it's even game script dependent necessarily because they don't always use him as the third down back. Last week he had a smash spot that he didn't do a ton with. I don't know, man. It's just weird. To me, he's nothing more than an upside handcuff, right? So we're sitting him. For the Ravens, I guess this is a hot take. I don't know. I'm still going to start Lamar this week. I have a couple rosters with like Jordan Love has a really good matchup this week. I have a Jacoby Brissett. I have a JJ McCarthy roster with Lamar. I guess you could say that those present some sort of tricky decisions for me. Pittsburgh gives up the 6th most fantasy points to quarterback. Lamar Jackson for the first time this week opened up in full. He's had 6 lower body injuries in 5 weeks. I hope that at some point he gets healthier. He's not regressing in terms of he's not getting in extra DNPs. They said they're veteran rest days when he DNPs. He's not like going throughout the week not participating. He's getting 1 veteran rest day in the middle, which he did not take this week. So I think you just kind of have to hope that he gets healthier. He's got one of the easier schedules for quarterback for the rest of the season. He's got a couple games that project as shootouts with New England and Green Bay to finish week 16, 17, coming off of Cincinnati week 15. I think the best move here is to keep starting him, to hope things improve, but also to have a contingency. I mean, I hate burning a roster spot as we're heading into playoffs when I drafted a quarterback that high on a contingency plan, but I do think you guys need to have that. But we're starting him. Derrick Henry, Winter Henry's here. Henry's been rolling. I have a couple Henry rosters. It's really fun. It's really fun having Derrick Henry this time of the year. And then Zay Flowers. I know Zay Flowers has been, I think he's like wide receiver 31 or 32 and a half PPR this year. I know that's really disappointing. He's come so close to the end zone. The last like 3 or 4 weeks, he's been tackled inside the 5 multiple times. To me, he is strictly a start and a good matchup guy. And I know he busted against Cincinnati, so that's even a hard thing to say. I'm going at it one more time here. The Steelers give up a lot of points to wide receivers. It's a heated division game. It's a game for first place. I'm going to flex Zay Flowers. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to grit my teeth, and I'm going to flex Zay Flowers. And I think we get our first high-end wide receiver 2, back-end wide receiver 1 week since like week 2 out of him. That's what I think. And then Mark Andrews, the newly extended $40 million man in Mark Andrews. I thought this was a joke. I when I read it at first, I thought someone was sharing his previous contract signing, or I checked the Adam Schefter thing to see if it was actually Adam Schefter. I really did. There was talks that they were going to extend Isaiah Likely this offseason. I don't think that's possible now. It appears that they have committed to Mark Andrews. He's been the tight end 13 on the year and half PPR in total points, not points per game. I, he's got a really good schedule rest of season. He's got a good connection with Lamar. I think he has the upside to get 15 points on weeks where he scores you a touchdown. Even last week in like a down week, he still got like 6 or 7 points. It's just sort of a really boring low end tight end one. That's just what it is. But I do think you're starting him here. And then your sits are going to be other wide receivers and Isaiah Likely. I wish Likely had taken the starting role this year. To me, it would be the best thing for fantasy. A, I think it would help Lamar. B, I think it would give them a super tight end to roll out with top 5 locked in weekly upside. C, it would give them a younger guy to carry in the long term. They have decided to say, screw all that. We're going with old man Mark Andrews, at least for the next 2 years, which is really a bizarre decision to me. But I am looking forward to this game. Huge game, huge stakes. Does Lamar have any magic left in him this year? Have the injuries taken it all out of him? My chips personally, I'm gonna grit it out. I'm gonna move forward. I'm gonna bet thousands and thousands of dollars of free Tendies fantasy championships that Lamar can come around by the end of the season. But I think we all need to be prepared for the reality that maybe the guy that was there the first month simply isn't anymore.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned magic, right? Because you know what this spot is. It is
Yeah,
the
the
rah Tomlin spot. So for those of you that aren't aware, the Steelers, like the gamblers know this. The sports bettors are super on this, right? Whenever the Steelers and the Ravens play football, like the underdog in the game usually covers it like a significantly higher margin, right? These games are always closer than they
and the
appear to
unders,
be. The
the
unders are
unders too.
usually a really good, like that almost always happens. And the Steelers historically have played really, really well against Lamar Jackson, because Mike Tomlin, Steelers defense, all that stuff, right? If you want to have some good news, Yanni, I think our canary in the coal mine this week was our friend Chad Millman. Chad Millman, he runs Sharper Square gambling show. Him and Simon Hunter, his co-host, every year they just process bet the Steelers as underdogs. That's it. They don't even think about the game. They're like, yeah, no, this will be closer. Rah Tomlin spot. This week they picked the Ravens instead. They're also of the opinion that this is not the same Steelers football team.
Yeah.
I've always said the Mike Tomlin magic is not real, right? We're gonna bet on what we see. I know that it's been a rough couple weeks for Lamar Jackson. Like not getting there against the Bengals is honestly shocking to me. I would be pushing my chips into. I think that our bullishness on Lamar and the Ravens should be a process bet here. I have to think it gets better. If you Lamar Jackson managers can survive, like I wouldn't be shocked if this wasn't a great week for him, just because it's the Steelers. Maybe Tomlin like has a good game plan for them, right? But if you can make it through this week, I feel like he'll be a difference in the fantasy playoffs if you can make it that far. I actually will not be betting the Ravens this week though, on the gambling show because it's been so weird for me. That's enough of the gambling talk though. All right, this one will be very easy.
This
We
is my
got the
favorite slide of the week, dude. This is my favorite slide of the entire season. Go on.
All right, we got the Tennessee Titans going to the Shador Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. The Titans have an implied team total of 15 points, and the Browns have an implied team total of 18.5 points. For those of you who aren't very good at math, that is a 33.5 implied team total. which has got to be the lowest total I've ever seen in my life.
It's the lowest I've ever seen,
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
the lowest
100%.
I've ever seen. For the Titans, we are starting absolutely no one. For the Browns, Quinshon Judkins a good player, and the Titans suck, so I think he's the Derrick Henry of the Browns, RB2 this week, probably a good chance of getting in the end zone. And then Harold Fanta got a long touchdown last week against the Niners. It feels like if anyone has a pulse, it's him on the Browns. You got anything on it?
No, no, horrific. I do think Judkins might slide into back end RB1 territory this week. I love Judkins this week. No, that's it. Okay, God, I get the exciting. I was looking at these our slate of games. Ted's got the boring stuff. I get the fun stuff. Bills or the Bengals going to the Bills with an implied team total of 24. Bills with an implied team total of 29.5. I believe that is the highest on the week. Um, as it should be, by the way. And of course, I'm going against Josh Allen in multiple must-win games. But for the Bengals, we have Joe Burrow back, and Joe Burrow looked pretty good. He was moving around in the pocket, got right back on track with Jamar Chase. You didn't get the touchdown last week, but you did get like 14 and a half PPR, really healthy usage. It does look like Higgins is going to miss with his concussion. Well, no, excuse me. It looked like that in the beginning of the week. He has not progressed through, I guess, like the technical measures. They have like reaction time measures and stuff like that. That's part of the protocol. However, he was out there in a limited fashion catching balls today, which makes me think they are trying to rush him back for this one. If Higgins goes, you're going to start him. Joe Burrow, you're going to start him. And then Jamar Chase and Chase Brown. Chase Brown has worked his way into back end RB1 territory, which is pretty surprising with what it looked like in the middle of the year. This was a guy who was aggressively panic selling at one point this year, but he has effectively battled back. And then Jamar Chase, obviously Joe Burrow's back. Jamar Chase I think he's live here to go nuclear toward the back half of this year. His schedule's amazing. I am actively running for my life from our very own Theodore in Free Tendies Fantasy League 7. I want no part of a week 15 or 16 matchup with Jamar Chase. But look, you're starting them all. Really good matchup, really good over under, should be explosive, assuming there's no inclement weather. Absolutely love the matchup for the Bengals here, and I love the matchup for the Bills too. Josh Allen, James Cook, Kincaid or Knox. Kincaid practiced in limited fashion today, but somehow got injured again. So he came off the hamstring and I think injured his knee or his toe in practice. I don't know if that's like a wear and tear thing where he ended up getting treatment on it because he got active again and was a little sore. I'm not sure. Keep an eye on it. If he goes limited game time decision, I don't know how good I feel about him. That's kind of the worst case is he goes, but he's sort of banged up. If it's one or the other, so if Kincaid gets in 2 full practices this week, or if Kincaid gets ruled out and it's Dawson Knox, this is like the unicorn matchup for tight ends. They absolutely go crazy here. We obviously had the Loveland explosion this year. God help you if you have Trey McBride, if you're going against Trey McBride in week 17 of the championship with the Bengals matchup. So I love one of them if Kincaid gets a couple full practices in, or if he sits, go ahead and stream Knox. Knox becomes a great streamer this week. And then Khalil Shakir, high scoring game, should get tons of volume. And then this one's a little weird. Your sort of tricky decision is going to be Keon Coleman. Got a touchdown last week. I know he's been terrible most of this week. This is probably more of a DraftKings or DFS thing. I love him in DraftKings or DFS this week. If you're going to throw a dart on a cheap guy, I think this is a really good one to do. You're really just betting on a touchdown, probably not going to get volume, but with the offensive environment, with how unproductive Bills receivers have been outside of Shakir, I think he's live here to maybe do something, especially if Kincaid is out. He gets used a little bit more in the red zone. I don't know if in 12-team half PPR, you're really going to start him. More of a DFS thing, or in 14-team, you need an emergency flex. I actually really don't hate it, but temper your expectations. It is Keon Coleman.
Yeah, my only two things on this game, right? Josh Allen has had a shaky last 3 weeks of football, really, ever since his 45-point game. I am worried about the Bills long term against real teams because it feels like they have absolutely nothing on
Yeah.
the outside. But this is the Bengals, so love Josh Allen this week. I think he has upside to be the quarterback one. And then for the Bengals, I just desperately need T. Higgins to come back. I have one team that's hanging on for dear life. If he doesn't come back, I'm flexing AD Mitchell and hoping for a 20-point game. So I would say that's a huge upgrade if I can get T. Higgins in there. Crossing my fingers. All right, next one. AFC West matchup. We got the Broncos going to Allegiant to play the Raiders. The Broncos have an implied team total of 24 points, and the Raiders have an implied team total of 16.5 points. For the Broncos, there's not much here really. It is just Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, and R.J. Harvey. Then we're going to tricky decision Troy Franklin. Then for the Raiders, our only start for you is Brock Bowers, and our tricky decision is Genty. And let's start with the Raiders. I feel like it's a very easy conversation, right? Brock Bowers is a generational talent stuck on a dog shit team. We're going to start him no matter what. You know, what do you get against the Broncos? Like 4 points the last time they played. He had one 31-yard touchdown, or not touchdown, they just 131-yard grab, I guess. That was outside in like the blustering winds in Denver where like the kicker, or I guess the punter, dropped the ball and it moved in the wind. So maybe inside of a dome is a little bit better here. I'm never not going to rank Brock Bowers inside of my top three tight ends because he's a physical freak, but been a little streaky since he's been back. I feel like this might be not a great one for him, but you're never sitting Brock Bowers. And then Genty, again, it's been so disappointing for him because the team is so bad, the offensive line is so bad, everything is so bad about the Las Vegas Raiders. The Broncos defense is really good. I would say typically with Genty, you start him against the just horrendous defensive lines, and then you want to be more cautious against the real defenses. Defenses don't get more real than the Denver Broncos. To me, Genty's like on the flex radar this week, maybe an RB2. Like,
Yep.
I don't know. You could start him, and you're hoping for those like targets out of the backfield and whatever carries he has to get something. But I think sub 10 is totally in the range of outcomes for him this week. For the Broncos, Bo Nix, I don't think he's a very good player, but he does kind of pop off against these bad teams, and the Raiders are a bad team. I think Bo Nix is a fine start this week. Bo Nix, I think, needs to be in that category of Jared Goff, a Jared Goff type of player, a Jordan Love type of player, where we only start him in the plus matchups. The good news for him is this is a plus matchup, so get him in your lineups. Mid-range quarterback one for me. Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin. I'm going to group these guys together because they're both the pass catchers, right? We do prefer Sutton this week because Troy Franklin has started to lose some of that usage he was getting because the Sean Payton and the Broncos are trying to get Pat Bryant more involved in the offense. Why that's happening, I don't really know. Maybe it's to get a better look at the rookie against these terrible teams. I'm not entirely sure, but for me, Cortland Sutton is the preferred start here. He's like a wide receiver 2 for me. Especially if Bo Nix like kind of produces, it should be a good Cortland Sutton week. Troy Franklin, like to me, he's more of like a flex option, and I would probably prefer to go somewhere else with my flex, like someone with higher upside, but just depends on your roster and what you have. Then I think RJ Harvey is a no-brainer start for me this week. He just doesn't really have any competition in the backfield because it's not because he won the job, it's because J.K. Dobbins is out. But with no competition in the backfield, we think he's an explosive player. He could probably improve a little bit, but I mean, that's fine. It's the Oakland Raiders. I think RJ Harvey is a high end RB2 for me this week, borderline RB1. Anything on this one?
Not a lot. I mean, as a guy who really loved RJ Harvey coming into the draft and like, fantasy draft too, I'm pretty shocked by how bad he's looked. For the most part, he does not have a feel for like holes and where to cut. He doesn't have good vision in my opinion. And it's like sort of, I don't know. It's been a very bizarre. The player has not looked like what I thought coming out of college he would look like in the NFL, but I do think you start him in this sort of matchup. Okay, Bears at Packers. Bears with an implied team total of 19 points, playing Green Bay in Green Bay with an implied team total of 25.5. Winner of this matchup is in sole possession of first place, not just in their division, I believe, in the NFC. Because yeah, the Eagles are 9-4. Well, I guess the Rams. So I believe if the Bears lose, the Rams would still be ahead of Green Bay by one game, assuming the Rams win this week. But huge stakes for like the shape of the playoff race, for the shape of the division. I absolutely love the clip that's going around of Ben Johnson slighting Green Bay and specifically Matt LaFleur in his introductory press conference. He said, I have a ton of respect for Minnesota and the way we've been playing in the last few years. I have a ton of respect for Chicago and the way we've been playing in the last few years. And I've really enjoyed beating up on Matt LaFleur twice a year. To me, that is a pretty direct he little broed him before he even got to the division as a head coach. So I think that's interesting, right? I'm really looking forward to it. However, this Green Bay defense is not a great matchup for the Chicago Bears. They're really not. You have two running backs that are sort of splitting reps in Swift and Monangai. We're going to go ahead and prefer Swift there. Monangai DNP'd today, although there was this weird report from a Chicago beat writer that Swift was getting the veteran rest days earlier in the year in the middle of the week. Now they're giving Monangai the rest days in the middle of the week. That seemed like speculation to me. Like he didn't say that he went and talked to the coaching staff. Kind of interesting though to see going forward. Like, do they maybe consider Monangai the 1A to Swift's 1B? I don't know. To me, Swift looked really, really good last week. Like he looked excellent. I think it's just more a thing where one, I think they're both actually pretty productive with how productive the Chicago rushing game has been. But I prefer Swift because of the explosives and because of the passing down work. But maybe in like standard or half PPR, maybe you want to say that Monangai is more likely to get a touchdown, so that should matter more. To me, it's very clearly Swift 1A, Monangai 1B, but I am curious about that Chicago beat reporter flagging that. But we're going to sort of tricky decision Swift. We're going to sit Monangai, and then we're not really starting anyone else. We're sitting Caleb Williams. I think this is a terrible matchup for Caleb. However, there's serious ceiling there, right? Because he has a rushing upside and he has like 30 point per game ceiling any given week. But I'm not trying to chase that here. Loveland just cannot get consistent. He has 2 double-digit games in half PPR the last 6 weeks. Love the player, love the role. It just hasn't all come together yet. He hasn't fully taken over. It's probably more of a play for next season. And then the wide receivers, Odunze, over 50% of his targets are uncatchable. He's still getting the wide receiver 1 volume there, but like Caleb's inaccuracy is sort of catching up to him. They're not capitalizing on the plays he's making. He's also got his own dropping issues. Like he's dropped a few touchdowns. Actually, that league I referenced earlier where I lost out on the bye because of the Terry McLaurin explosion, I would have had the bye locked up if DJ Moore hadn't dropped, or if Odunze hadn't dropped that touchdown earlier in the year. It's just really frustrating. It's just is why I lost a game by 0.3 with Odunze. DJ Moore, not really relevant. And then Burden has really ascended into a nice like usage rate there, but it's been tapering off when they go super run heavy in the second half of games because he's not a great run blocker. So like the last 2 weeks, he's gotten like 4 to 5 targets in the first half of games and then basically has not been on the field for the second half. Burden is just one of those guys I kind of like as my wide receiver 5 in case DJ Moore or Odunze goes down and he actually gets a full-time role. I think he could be really productive with it. I just don't think he's a realistic anything right now. I don't think you're really looking at him. And I don't want to start Odunze, to be entirely honest with you. I would rather not. Like, I have a roster where I have a choice. I am rolling Alec Pierce over Odunze comfortably. It's not even a decision thing. And I could start Odunze over Charbonnet on that roster. I'm going to start Charbonnet this week. So it's like, that's where it's at. Last week, I started Tyrone Tracy Jr. over Odunze. Like, I'm just not terribly interested in being in the Odunze business right now with the way things are going there. And that's a shame. I love the player. I loved him in the preseason, thought he would be their wide receiver 1, and it is not panned out after the first month. For the Packers, very straightforward most of the time. I think moving forward, I think this is what you can expect. Josh Jacobs, mid-range to high-end RB1 any given week. Love him this week. Jordan Love in good matchups. We're rolling him. This is a great matchup for Jordan Love. Highly recommend starting him as a mid-range quarterback 1 with like 24, 26 point upside. And then Christian Watson. Since week 11, Christian Watson is the wide receiver 12 in points per game. I have been flexing him. I have a roster that lost Drake London, Cam Scattaboo, Trey Benson. Like, I just lost all these guys, and then I made a bunch of trades to get guys. So like, I just lost everyone that was in my flex. I picked up Christian Watson, and I've just sort of been flexing him for 3 weeks. It's actually it's fine. I don't mind at all. He's got a really, really soft schedule rest of season. I saw he was on waivers in a few of my leagues this week. Make sure and check that he's not. I'm not saying he's not going to be the wide receiver 12 in points per game for the rest of the year, but could he be wide receiver 22, 21, 20? And is that perfectly serviceable as a flex? I think absolutely. He plays Chicago again in the fantasy playoffs. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Again, I'm biased, right? I'm trying not to be too effusive. I love Christian Watson as a player. I loved him coming out of college. I wanted the Niners to draft him. I drafted him way too much last year. So maybe I'm not objective in that. Ted can straighten me out. And then we're going to sit other wide receivers, other tight ends. Dontavian Wicks, truthers, calm down. I know he's had a good couple weeks. We are not starting Dontavian Wicks. Romeo Dobbs. I was a huge Romeo Dobbs drafter. I have like 35% in underdog. But he had his run. His run is over. And then Jaden Reed was doing a bunch of media this week. It sort of made it seem like to me they're going to try to get him back out there this week, but I'm not sure. Golden hasn't practiced in months. To me, this is basically Christian Watson, or you're going to go ahead and avoid the wide receiver room in Green Bay.
Yep, totally agree. To be honest, Yanni, I have been flexing Christian Watson in one league for like a month, and it's been fine.
Have you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that was a roster that had Malik Neighbors go down. It
Yep.
was I
Yep.
drafted Xavier Worthy, so I've been comfortably starting Christian Watson over Xavier Worthy. He's fine. He's fine. He's not like some generational talent or anything, but
No.
it looks
No.
like based on what the Packers have with Golden not doing anything really this year, it seems like he is the one you want there. Then for the Bears, my copium on this League One team needs to beat the team I'm playing this week by 13 points and outscore a couple of other teams. So like I probably need like 120, 130 point week. It is a Justin Herbert roster, and I am rolling Caleb Williams this week. My copium on that is that the Packers play against the run really well. And I really liked that Ben Johnson has been calling out that the Bears passing game has not been good enough. I am hoping and praying to God that Caleb Williams has a good game here. How you beat the Packers is passing the ball. So we'll see. I'm not holding my breath on it, but I have the Caleb Williams Colston Loveland stack. Caleb killed me last year. I said I'd never watch any more Bears football. As it turns out, I'm more reliant on the Bears this year than I would have liked to have been. But it is what it is. We'll see. All right, next one. NFC West matchup. We got the Rams going into Arizona to play the reeling Cardinals. The Rams have an implied team total of 28.5 points here, and the Cardinals have an implied team total of 20 points. For the Rams, it's the standard shit we tell you every week. It's start Matt Stafford, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Kyron Williams. Then we're going to sit all of the tight ends. Then for the Cardinals, it looks like Marvin Harrison Jr. is not playing this week. This slide is based on that information, or I guess that assumption that he's not playing this week. There would be adjustments if he was playing. Just keep your eyes on the injury reports, but we're saying he's not playing. So we're going to start Jacoby Brissett, Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson, actually, the handcuff wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. And then we're going to sit the running backs, whether or not Trey Benson plays. And we'll just start with the Cardinals. It's very simple, right? Jacoby Brissett, I think he's averaging like 20 to 21 points per game since he's taken over as the starter for Kyler Murray. The Cardinals lose a lot of football games and they have to throw to catch up, and Jacoby Brissett is fine in garbage time. I think in this game, it's a very safe assumption to say the Rams will be probably ahead comfortably. The Cardinals will be playing from behind. I think Jacoby Brissett's a totally fine high floor quarterback one for you this week. Trey McBride, no explanation needed. I think he's the clear tight end one at this point. I think Brock Bowers is a significantly better player than Trey McBride, but Trey McBride's role is too good. And the offense does not have the downside that an Oakland Raiders with Geno Smith offense has. And then Michael Wilson, if Marvin Harrison Jr. does not play and Jacoby Brissett's going to throw the ball 40 to 45 times, Michael Wilson, I think, is a totally acceptable start here, especially against a Rams defense that does not have the best corners in the world. I was watching the Rams game, I guess last week against the Panthers for a little bit because I had Puka Nacua, and one of the announcers was talking about how Emmanuel Forbes has really stepped into his own and is really playing well. I'm selling that all the way down the river. Emmanuel Forbes is not a good player. I think Michael Wilson, wide receiver 2 this week, wide receiver 3 borderline, mostly a volume play, but I think there's going to be a lot of it there. Then the running backs, the Rams are the number 1 scoring defense against fantasy running backs this year. Trey Benson, I don't know if he's going to play this game. I would almost lean like he's not going to play this game. He had his like IR return window open. So if Trey Benson is not off the IR by Tuesday of next week, then he's shut down for the rest of the season, right? I would assume I'm kind of like projecting a little bit here, but I think the Cardinals are so out of it. There's no reason to rush back Trey Benson from a torn meniscus at this point. I don't think they really care. So I feel like it's going to be mostly Bam Knight and Michael Wilson because Amari DiMercado's out. I'm not interested in Bam Knight in a featured role against the Rams. I'm just not. Like, I mean, Bam Knight maybe in soft matchups you could start him, but this is not one of them. Then for the Rams, it's very simple, right? Matt Stafford has no rushing upside, but he throws touchdowns at an alarming rate this season. He had a weird one against the Panthers last week, but the best quarterbacks in the league, like Brock Purdy, also have tough outings against against the Panthers. It's fine. This Cardinals defense, they don't really have anyone in the secondary. I think Stafford's a totally fine start this week. Puka and Devontae Adams both inside of my top 10. Devontae Adams right now is on. He has the most touchdowns inside of the 5 yard line of any wide receiver in NFL history, and right now his touchdown rate, I guess, is on pace to match like Jerry Rice for like the most of all time. You know, in the offseason or whatever, I said Devontae Adams is live to go for double digit touchdowns if Matt Stafford stays healthy. I was not projecting 18 or 19 touchdowns. He has been a smash in the fourth or fifth round wherever you got him. And honestly, like I'm starting to see some is do you prefer Devonte Adams to Puka rest of season type of talk. If the usage stays the same, yeah, I do prefer Devonte Adams to Puka rest of season. I love Puka the player. It's just he's not getting the aggressive amount of touchdowns that Devonte Adams is in the red zone. So we love them both this week. Maybe I like Adams a little bit more than Puka, but they're both elite wide receiver one starts. Kyron Williams, again, like he's the most boring like RB2 in the world, but he's an RB2. Sean McVay's running back is a good position to have playing. I see a lot of Blake Corum chatter. Blake Corum is not about to take over this backfield, even if he is. I think it's on the board that Blake Corum is like just a better football player than Kyron Williams, but I think there's this weird equity that Kyron has with the Los Angeles Rams. They just extended him, so he's going to be there for a while. Even if he's not like the most explosive or talented player, like he's in a prolific offense. He gets like at least 60% of the work on a weekly basis. Against a not very good team in the Arizona Cardinals, I think it's fine. Like as an RB2. Then we're going to sit the tight ends again. Like if they were all one guy, I would be really interested in the Rams tight ends, but they're just not. It's funny because the Rams run this 13 personnel all the time that Puka managers cannot fucking stand, right? And the tight ends are like getting a ton of touchdowns, a ton of work out of that look, but it's just like, okay, is it going to be Ferguson? Is it one of the other guys? We don't really know. I don't think they're startable unless there was catastrophic injury to multiple guys in that tight end room. Anything on this one?
Not a ton. I mean, Kyron is like the RB9 in total points and half PPR, but he lost that monster ceiling. Because the Rams actually said today, like, look, we're worried about Kyron being there in the postseason, which just means like if they get up enough in games, it's not a 30 touch Kyron game anymore. It's going to be a 15 touch Blake Corum game on top of 15 Kyron touches. He got clipped with the ankle a little bit, which he got treatment for today. He popped up as questionable on the report. And then Devontae Adams has such obscene touchdown equity in the offense. Like those used to be Kyron touchdowns. They're just not. So like I picked him at the 2-3 turn in a couple drafts, and he's been fine. He's like a fine RB2. I have him paired with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like whatever. You're not relying on him to stake your roster there. But for people that went like wide receiver, or wide receiver tight end, or wide receiver quarterback, and then followed that up with a 2-3 turn Kyron Williams, yeah, I can imagine that has been sort of a roster killer this year. I would not want him anchoring a running back room. Yeah, so it's just been a weird year for him. It will probably be the last Kyron Williams ownership shares I ever have. Um, yeah.
I've never once drafted Kyron Williams. I was actually in on the theory of the player this year, but Brock Bowers was just sitting there in all of the
Yeah.
draft rooms I was in, and I was not passing up Brock.
Okay, Texans at Chiefs. All of a sudden, kind of an important game for the Texans, who are like live to make themselves competitive in their division, which is shocking to me. The Texans coming off the 13th highest rated pass blocking game of the season that their offensive line has had, which is also shocking to me. A few things coming around. On the Texans. Did they round this big corner? I don't think so. I honestly think what happened is their defense has just been beating the shit out of, like in the early part of the year when your teams are healthier and you're feeling good, you can withstand that caliber of defensive beating, I think, a little bit better. At this point in the year, dude, and like we've discussed this multiple times this year with the Chiefs, like they've played an additional season or season and a half of football in the Mahomes era of just playoff football. So an extra season or season and a half of the hardest hitting football imaginable on planet Earth against the best teams in the world. Think of how physically beat down the core of veterans are on the Chiefs. And then they get this young, savage defense in the Texans. The Texans are like, they make me a little bit uncomfortable watching them play football. It's awesome, but like, I'm like, oh my, someone's gonna die, right? So like, dude, imagine Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is like probably a little old, little tired, right? He's a little drained by old Taylor there, and like he's got to go across the middle at what, like Petrie and
Aziz.
Chauncey. Yeah, dude, Aziz, like Chauncey Gardner's not on there, is he? He went to no, he went to the Bears. He went to the Bears. But no, dude, just like those guys fucking crack. And I think what's happening as the year goes on, and I say this as a Texans bull, like it would be convenient for my narrative to be like, this is what I saw in the Texans. It's not true. I think what's going on though is these teams are getting tired and that defense is beating the hell out of them. So I'm really like, to me, this does not seem like a huge game. I actually think this is a huge game. One of these teams stays alive in the wild card and potentially even for their division, less likely with the Chiefs. The other one probably has their playoff hopes dashed here. So I'm really excited, and it is going to be a slugfest on the Chiefs offensive side of the ball. We'll start there. Texans with an implied team total of 19, Chiefs with an implied team total of 22.5 at home at Arrowhead. For the Chiefs, I don't like the matchup for Mahomes, but I think you just have to start Mahomes. He's been stellar this year for the most part in fantasy. Travis Kelce is the tight end 2.5 PPR. You absolutely have to start Travis Kelce every week. Again, not a great matchup. I don't like it. Rashee Rice, I hate this matchup for him. Rashee Rice, since returning from his suspension, is the wide receiver 1 in points per game. He just passed Jackson Smith and Jigba and Puka Nacua in points per game in half PPR since coming back. That is in large part because of the ridiculous manufactured low ADOT and red zone role that Mahomes and Reed assigned to him. Is it because he's the caliber of player these guys are? Absolutely not. I don't even think, I said he's like Amon-Ra St. Brown attached to Mahomes. I don't even think he's an Amon-Ra St. Brown caliber player, to be totally honest with you. I think there's a pretty clear talent gap there, but he's just got this, it's this really specific designed thing. And I think that insulates him a little bit from a really tough defensive matchup. Now, Denver, he actually did have a dud game, right? So maybe not. But like they can work around him getting off the Derek Stingley Jr. matchup. They can sort of work in the red zone if they're going to run some weird read option handoff with Rashee Rice in the backfield. There's really not a whole lot of like schematic ways to scheme him out of the game. So I think his production will be stable here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one of his worst games of the season. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see JSN and Puka go ahead and pass him up in points per game after this week, but you have to start him, right? And then your sits are going to be Worthy and the running backs. I avoid running backs on a good day against the Texans. I don't want Kareem Hunt or the ghost of Isaiah Pacheco. Really, it's the ghost of Kareem Hunt and the ghost of Isaiah Pacheco. I don't want them starting in here. I really don't. And then Xavier Worthy, I actually have to emergency flex him in one league. I don't have a choice. I'm not expecting, I'll be thrilled if he gets 7 points in half PPR. I will consider that a wildly successful outing. He's been like 7 to 9 points the last 2 weeks. I actually think his usage has increased. We've seen the chunk plays. We saw a nice reverse where he picked up like 20 or 30 yards last week, plus the big chunk where he probably could have scored, but he cut the ball outside. He's looked fine. And it seems like they're using him in a healthy manner. So like, I think he's live for a wide receiver 3 finish this week, but I'm not expecting an explosion. I think I checked when I had to start him. I believe he has only had 1 double-digit half PPR game in 2025. Would be surprised if it's here. For the Texans, we're going to go ahead and start Nico Collins. Disappointing as a first-round pick, probably one of the players that's most correlated with not making the playoffs if you took him as your first-round draft pick. But he has ascended into a top 10 wide receiver in points per game since week 2, and in games he's finished, he's even been a little higher. The offense has looked healthier the last few weeks. Nick Caley is actually really moving him around the formation more, which was something a lot of Nico guys were calling for. He got the reverse, the end-around touchdown last week. And then he just had 1 skip off his fingertips, or maybe it was called out of bounds. Should have had a second touchdown last week. Would have been a 25-point half PPR game. He's had really good showings the last few weeks, but it also just never feels great. Like I traded for a good amount of Nico Collins this year. It just doesn't feel great every time you have to roll him out there because the offensive line is so bad and the team's so shaky. Plus, this is a really tough matchup. I think Ted was saying, he thinks it's a sub 10-point game. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it. Like I'll consider this one a really successful game. If Nico can just get us to 12 or 13 half PPR points, I think that's a smash for him, given the circumstances. And unfortunately, I have two rosters with Nico Collins and Rashi Rice both on them. I don't think they're going to do very well this week. I'm kind of expecting to lose both those games. But still, start. Your sits are going to be Marks, Chubb, and Stroud. Marks DNP'd in practice today, I think.
Yep, DMP.
Yeah, DNP'd. He should get passing volume if he's in, but that's really like a full PPR desperation RB3. Again, I looked at his point total because I did something stupid. I traded Woody Marks for the Texans defense in Free Tendies Fantasy League 1. I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to put him in my starting lineup all year. The Texans defense, I think, will be the number one defense in the playoffs. They have an incredible schedule. I'm going to take the upside shot that a weekly starter for me goes for 13 to 18 points in the fantasy playoffs. And I'm going to trade Woody Marks for the Texans defense. I'll be honest, I don't feel that bad about it. It was a stupid thing to do. Don't do it, but I did. And I just don't know. It's really annoying because like the role is really good on paper. And this is a guy I've told you guys to go pick up off waivers and trade for this year. Like it just didn't come together. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's bad blocking. Maybe it's just overall the offense being inefficient at times, situationally poor. I'm not sure. But it's frustrating. And then Nick Chubb is done. CJ Stroud, I actually think if you want to stream him in good matchups, like again on a Lamar Jackson roster, I'm holding CJ Stroud because he plays Vegas week 18 and then the Chargers week 17, or excuse me, Vegas week 16, the Chargers week 17. I think those are streamable games if you really need to. I just would not get him in here. And then Higgins has been a rock solid wide receiver 3 for like the last 5 or 6 weeks. And with all the attention Nico Collins gets, I actually think he's like a sneaky start. Maybe a good, like if you want a $3,000 to $4,000, maybe he'll be like $4,500 on DraftKings. If you want a cheap guy like that or a cheap DFS captain, I don't hate it at all this week.
Yeah, Woody Marks, he is my most traded for player this year. I wasn't like actively seeking out Woody Marks, but like it just happened a lot. I think he's left at least 7 games this year mid-game for an injury and come back, which is insane. Every single time Woody Marks, I get the little injury ping and I'm like, oh God, he's done. And then he comes back. Like, so I don't know. I feel like it's less about Woody Marks and more about just the Texans offense blowing, right? And this is a really horrendous spot. Against the Chiefs, it must win. I could just be on my Chiefs copium, but I don't think the Texans stand a chance here.
You think?
They're,
You're not worried at all about the Mahomes versus Texans D matchup.
I think if
Not
anyone
like
can,
Mahomes.
I think if anyone
Not
can
like,
beat the Texans
yeah.
defense, like it's Mahomes. Like I don't know.
Okay.
Like
No,
I've been
I don't.
betting the Chiefs every week, saying the Chiefs are going to win every week. They're now a 500 football team. If the Chiefs lose this game, their chance to make the playoffs, like per calculations, is under
11%.
20%. It's like
So it goes down to 11.
yeah, it's done if the Chiefs don't win this game. So I'd be shocked, but I mean that Texans defense is really good. I don't know. Then for Travis Kelsey, I guess like yeah, it's been the least sexy tight end 2 season of the year, but what having Rice and Worthy on the field has done is really open up the field for 33-year-old Travis Kelsey. I guess that's what the Chiefs wanted to do. It
For
just goes
soccer
to
dad.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like it's just the relationship with Mahomes. Really, I think is really all it is. But yep, start him this week.
Dude, I have a Travis Kelsey roster that is like hilariously rolling. Like it's just been this like comedy of errors. And actually, weirdly enough, I had $63 of fab I was saving. I blew it on the Texans defense for the playoffs. So on that roster. But yeah, dude, like I don't know if you've noticed that, but like Travis Kelsey, all of a sudden I'm seeing him like left and right at the top of power rankings and like fantasy leagues. He's been like this weird force multiplier that no one cared about or wanted. And I accidentally took him. He just fell back to the 9th. But
All right, Monday night. I have very strong convictions on this game. I'll just go ahead and preface this. I feel like there may be some hot takes coming, but it is what it is. We got the Eagles going to SoFi to play the Chargers. The Eagles have an implied team total of 21 points, and the Chargers have an implied team total of 18.5 points. Vegas says this does not touch 40 points. I guess it's possible, but it seems incredibly low for the quality of player on both of these teams. Eagles have an implied team total of 21 points. Chargers have an implied team total of 18.5 points. For the Eagles, we're starting Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Saquon Barkley, and we're going to tricky decision Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. Then for the Chargers, this is where the hot takes start. We have absolutely no starts for you, which is crazy because this Chargers team, even though it's been a roller coaster, like they have been relevant for so long. We are saying not this week and potentially maybe not again for the rest of the season. We're going to sit Justin Herbert. We're sitting Quentin Johnston. We're sitting Keenan Allen. One of my favorite 13th round picks I've ever had this year was Keenan Allen. I had just dropped him. I think that's over. We're sitting Oronde Gadsden, and then we're sitting the running back conglomeration because we are assuming that Omari and Hampton comes back this week and will be splitting time with Kamani Vidal. And our only person we're even thinking about putting in our lineups is Lad McConkey, and I don't even love that. And we'll start with the Chargers first, right? It's as simple as Justin Herbert breaking his hand, having surgery on Monday, getting a plate inserted in his non-throwing hand, right? So I would assume that he plays in this game, but he's going to be like having some pain tolerance issues. But the issue with the Chargers and this entire offense and team in general, right, is because they lost Rashawn Slater preseason and because they lost Joe Alt for multiple stretches this year and now Joe Alt's out for the rest of the year, right? The efficiency offensively and what you're getting out of Herbert in the passing game and pretty much everyone is staggeringly bad without Joe Alt. Justin Herbert has not had a 20-point game without Joe Alt, with Joe Alt. I guess without Joe Alt this year, right? He had a nice stretch like where Joe Alt came back, where he was like I think he was the fantasy quarterback one within that stretch. But since Joe Alt went down, let me pull up his point total so I know what I'm talking about here. He's gone for 14.7 against Pittsburgh. That should be an easy matchup for teams. He went 4.3 points against Jacksonville. That's one of the best possible matchups for passing the football, right? And then he went for 13.84 against Vegas. He's going up against Jalen Carter, Jalen Phillips, and the savage Philadelphia Eagles defense this week. Not only do I not like the start, not only would I not start him under any circumstances, I think he's a drop candidate. The only week the rest of the season that I would start Justin Herbert without Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater in would be week 16 against Dallas. That is it. I am starting I'm starting Caleb Williams and Colston Loveland on a roster that had Justin Herbert and the Aronde Gadsden stack that was kind of carrying me throughout the year. I think it's over, boys. I think the Chargers fun and excitement for fantasy is over. I would punt it. You know, maybe Justin Herbert comes out here and looks really good, and then we can reevaluate. But going forward, like Lad is pretty much the only guy I want. If Amari and Hampton missed this game, then I might like some Kamani Vidal, but it sounds like they want to get Hampton back in there. And we've been like pounding the table, telling you this on Sell High videos. This is going to be a backfield split. It's going to be a gross backfield split. Omarion Hampton is not coming back and going to be the player that he was before the ankle fracture. We saw it last year with Isaiah Pacheco. He came back and was a ghost of himself. The Chargers came into the season with Najee Harris because they were perfectly happy being a backfield split. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted a two-back system. Kamani Vidal has played good enough. This is going to be a two-back system. And we've seen this with these split backfields all the time, right? They cannibalize each other, then you can't start either one. And with the way the Chargers offensive line has been sustaining such great injury, right? Like it feels like you're not going to be able to start either of them, especially not against Philadelphia. Out, out on the Chargers, and it hurts me because they've been so good to me this year for fantasy. For the Eagles, I mean the Chargers defense has played pretty well. Like they have weeks where they just get curb stomped. I think they're like a middle of the road to potentially a good defense. Jalen Hurts, he's had to throw more with the Eagles not being able to run the ball effectively. Plus, Jalen has his own rushing upside. To me, he's like a mid-range to high-end quarterback one this week. I really like the spot for him. AJ Brown, if the usage continues, I think he's going to win fantasy football leagues. I know it was gross at the beginning of the year. Yanni, our friend Yanni, was proudly telling me how he faded AJ Brown everywhere, how he wanted no part of it. He would ask me questions. Oh, would you prefer T Higgins or AJ Brown rest of season, or just like these crazy insulting like types of AJ Brown questions? Listen, he is a very good player. AJ Brown is one of the best in the league at what he does. It is, and we said this pre-show, and I think it's true. It's like a question of whether or not the Eagles want to use him on a weekly basis. I think at this point we've seen enough. I feel like that running game is not going to get going this year. I think that teams are going to consistently stack the box and try and dare Jalen Hurts to beat them. AJ Brown, I think he's like a borderline wide receiver one this week, and rest of season I think he has top 10 upside. He has been the wide receiver two since the viral clip of him playing Madden came out where he said drop me in fantasy. As it turns out, that was when you should have added him in fantasy. Saquon Barkley, I love this player. He was one of my champions last year. It was cool watching him like get a Super Bowl. I don't know what's going on. I feel like it's a blocking issue. But to me, he's like a low end running back one to high end running back two, and that's mostly based on the usage and the passing game work. I feel like next year I'll be able to get Saquon at a very nice discount and be really happy about it. But for the rest of the season, until he shows me something that isn't popping off against the New York Giants, I don't trust it as much, but we're still not sitting him. Then for our tricky decisions, Devontae Smith, he's kind of gone back to the high variance player that he's been his entire career. There was a nice like month stretch that he had there where he was like outscoring AJ Brown handily in this offense, but now they're giving AJ Brown the looks. It's just kind of like, what are we doing with this? He's still a very nice player. I think the Eagles are going to pass here, so I can see arguments for flexing Devontae Smith, wide receiver twoing Devontae Smith, but I prefer AJ Brown until we see something different. And then Dallas Goddard, kind of like the weird usage scam that we've gotten, like all the gadget like touchdown plays inside the 3 yard line have kind of gone away. He's kind of regressed back to like a mid-range to low end tight end one. Like if you were drafting him in the 12th round or something like that, you still made a profit. I think it was still a, you could chalk it up as a win for the fantasy season, but I don't know if we're going to get those crazy outlier tight end, top five tight end weeks from Dallas Goddard anymore. I feel like he's just kind of like a ho hum tight end start on a weekly basis. What do you think, Yanni? Do you agree with me on just selling the Chargers down the river? I feel like a traitor, honestly, being so out on them because of how good they were to me this year, but that's just how I see it.
I'm selling the receivers. I'm probably selling Oronde Gadsden. But I do think if the run game really collapses with the offensive line, and if they have to keep passing at the rate they are, and they have some favorable matchups in the postseason, I do think Lad McConkey's a nice like mid-range to high-end wide receiver too rest of season. So I'm not that worried about Lad, especially he gets Dallas week 16. That's pretty good. And then the running backs, I totally agree on. I loved Omarion Hampton so much coming into this year. Between health and a split, just all of it, it's just not a good. It's not going to be a conducive environment to scoring fantasy points, unfortunately. Yeah, and then the AJ Brown thing, to me, it's like he just the offense is so much more explosive when they're giving him massive air yards and massive usage on the outside. Like, I don't know why they don't keep doing that, and I would keep doing that if I were them. And it sort of eats away at the usage specifically for Goddard more than Smith, because like if Smith had caught, if Jalen Hurts had put that ball on Smith last week, he should have had like a 30-yard touchdown. Then his point total would look a lot better. But to me, it's mostly like a Goddard thing. I'm kind of out on that. And then the last one is just Saquon. Really, really soft schedule for the rest of the year. I'm hoping it comes around. But I told you guys I'm locked in 11 of 12 of the free Tendies fantasy leagues in the playoffs. The only one I'm not is my Saquon roster. And that is because I keep getting in situations where I need fucking 15 points, 20 points from my first round pick, and he just can't get there. He just has not had a lot of that in his game. Is that Saquon's fault? I don't think entirely. It's just been it's been a really frustrating ride rostering Saquon, but I'm hoping if I get in that last 3 week stretch is so juicy that we get like full blown throwback Saquon for the last 3 weeks. I don't know what the odds of that are with Lane Johnson on IR, but a fella can hope, right? So
Well, fun fact for the fans. In one league, I tried to trade a manager, DeAndre Swift and Michael Pittman for Saquon Barkley, and he actually said that he would do it, but I decided not to because it was the guy Greg. He was a tanking manager. I didn't want. I'm an ethical baller, if nothing else. Whether or not that's trading Justin Jefferson when, or trading Emeka Egbuka when he got injured, pressing accept on a trade when Emeka Egbuka goes down with a hamstring, and then upcharging the guy Woody Marks on the trade back. I'm nothing if not an ethical baller, and I passed up the Saquon offer because
Yeah.
when I beat Yanni, I don't want him to complain about it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. Question of the day for the audience, and I got this one because I feel like this is deeply fascinating to me. What do we think Nine does this week, boys? Does Nine have a bounce back game against potentially the worst defense in the league, in the Washington Redskins, or is this thing completely done? I think that as a player in the NFL, I'm out on Nine almost entirely, which I try not to be hasty with my quarterback evaluations, but I can't unsee what I've seen with what's happening in Minnesota this year. But I do think that he has a good game this week against like a Pee Wee football level defense in the Washington Redskins. What do you think, Yanni? Do you think we've actually get a good 9 week, or is this thing toast?
Let me check the teams just to make sure I'm correct about who he plays the next 4 weeks before I say this
Oh,
because
dude, it's
it's
so juicy. The entire rest of season is so juicy. I'm just broken
so
that my Justin Jefferson team looks like it's not going to make it.
so he plays Washington, Dallas, New York, and Detroit. I personally think he will be a top 10 quarterback rest of season. Um I will take the slings and arrows that come with immortalizing that take on camera. But that schedule is, dude, I mean, that's like one of the greatest stretches for a 4 game stretch I've ever seen for a quarterback in fantasy. He should have all the room to operate, all the room to do what he wants. He's coming off a concussion. It's not a ligamentous injury. I heard the phrase ligamentous this week in a medical video. I thought that was really cool. It's not a ligamentous injury. It's like he should come back and play at some reasonable capacity. And honestly, I kind of think that Kevin O'Connell has to recognize like they need to force him to drop back 30 times a game and see what they have in him. So yeah, my hottest of hot takes is I think JJ McCarthy's a top 10 quarterback for the rest of the fantasy season.
If through this next month stretch, right? If JJ McCarthy is just as much of a tire fire as he's been all year,
Oh,
are you out on the
yeah.
player? Like, is it for his entire career, or do you still like have some hope that maybe he could be something?
I think he will. I think the physical attributes, dude. The reason Kevin O'Connell liked him so much, and the reason that I think the Shanahan tree coaches will like him so much, are because of those physical attributes that he has. Like he's got kind of the right makeup to be like a fancy Brock Purdy. So I think what it more is going to be is like I think his career takes the trajectory of can he go through a couple programs as a backup and get another chance to start. Like Zach Wilson, right? Zach Wilson was another guy who people really got hung up on the attributes because there was a lot of things about him that looked really high end, and then he just sort of sloshed out. I would say it's looking a lot closer to the Zach Wilson trajectory of just not an NFL caliber quarterback who will probably be a backup in a few places and then wash out of the NFL. But I still believe that I saw things in his college tape, dude. Like I think he's got the thing. I think he's got some of the physical stuff to be a player. Can he learn the mental stuff to be an NFL player? I think you can learn that, but can he learn it? I don't know. It looks bad. It looks really bad, dude. It's like it's some of the worst tape I've ever seen for a first year starting quarterback, especially considering the offense he's in and the coaching staff he has. I'm assuming you will be out on him
Um,
if these next 4 weeks don't pan
yeah,
out.
yeah, it's now or never. I think for Nine, and I
Okay.
actually just got a pretty good idea. You'll see what
Okay.
it is here in a second. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Thank you, and we will catch you for the gambling show.
Thank you guys.